Hi, everybody. Namaste. Welcome back. Just going to pull out one more Pope card, and then we can begin. So welcome back to our journey through the Marseille majors, or the Marseille-inspired majors, whatever way you want to call that. These triumphs are really, I don't know, it's such a deep and beautiful reflection, and I want to thank you all for your contribution to these conversations. It's been amazing, and I hope that even following this journey, that you will continue, and I will continue to read with these cards and to put them into good use. Okay. All right. Very hard to talk and pull a card. Hi, Arya. Welcome. All right. Where is le Pape? There it is. Okay, that is really quite a card. Okay, I haven't had this deck out for a while, so I wanted to pull out Triomphe della Luna. Okay. So I will start just letting you know I have a deck that I pulled out. I haven't had out at all during this series, and that is Flornoise Tarot de Jacques Viavi. And so let's just go through. So this is the Gassman Tarot. Yes, this is the Gassman Tarot. This one here, we looked at a side-by-side last week. This is the New Choice Tarot de Marseille. Triomphe della Luna. Jean Noblet, the smaller deck. This is the Joroski. This one is Fine dalla Torre. Dodal. And this is the Jacques Viavi. And in the pack that I have, there are 2 copies of the 22 majors, and most of the cards have a reversed printing of the majors. And this is one that both of the cards are exactly the same. So I may have had a pack that was not packed correctly. Yeah. All right. So the Pope. Where to begin? Let's begin closer to the beginning. Okay. There are so many interesting things we can look at in this card. And I think I would like to zoom in a little bit. Hi, Dee. Welcome. Personally, I don't tend to read this card negatively. And that might just be who I am. In whether this is a pope or a guru or your priest, a guide of some kind, it takes tremendous power and discipline to be an emissary of light. And just in all of my experiences, personally, I really hold this kind of energy in high esteem. And behind closed doors, when you have an opportunity to connect with this kind of a person, maybe they are a shaman maybe they are a Buddhist priest, whoever they are. It's a tremendous amount of responsibility as well too. And I I just hold all of those experiences, and I feel very fortunate to have had experiences with high priests and priestesses from in many places. Yeah. So this card is the first one where we see the receivers of the knowledge, the receivers of the light, except in the Fine della Torre. There is not. There is not. And something really interesting in this is you see the stigmata in the Fine della Torre. Yeah. So I just wanted to put that out there. And of course, we can talk about the opulence, the wealth, the abuse of power, but I'm not sure that that serves at all. Yeah, I don't pull this card a lot either. All right, so where do you want to begin? Shall we begin with the Pope or with the supplicants? Or I don't know. I mean, there's just so many things we can look at here. I know where I'm going to start. I want to talk about the staff in the left hand. The staff in the left hand. And the way that this staff connects to the figure on the right. And so there may be an interpretation of also the way that the Pope is looking. Interesting. I just noticed in the V, the Pope appears to be looking down at this supplicant. But in most Le Pape cards, the Pope is looking to the right. And so a lot of readers will interpret this card as the blessing being given to the card that is to the right of the Pape card. But this is kind of cool, the way the eyes go down here. But the staff seems to touch the supplicant, the cleric on the right. Like there is a direct transmission being given if the staff has the power to be a transmitter. And I really like these cards. There's a connection as well too, in a way, with the magician, and whether the Pope himself is the transmitter or the rod. There's just something to question about the supplicant on the right as opposed to supplicant on the left. So the supplicant that we see on the right is actually on the left of the Pope and in the direction that the Pope is looking. The wand, the rod is in, the staff is in the left hand. And so that is all to me quite significant. Hey, beautiful critters. Hi, Perry. Welcome to the conversation. And I have to say that I love the purple robes in the Via V deck. Oh my goodness. I don't know that I have seen purple in a Tarot de Marseille deck. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to go through. I know that Musings with Masha, she did share a Marseille deck that had quite a bit of purple, and I'm going to have to go back. I have no idea which deck it was. So if you know any other Tarot de Marseille decks, not strictly Tarot de Marseille, that have rich purple colors, can you let me know? Because I love purple. Another interesting thing we can look at is skin color versus white. And I know that there are some white hands, or possibly gloved hands, and skin-colored hands. And we see that in a variety of the decks. So have a look at your cards, because the left hand of the Pope in the Jodorowsky has a glove or a blue hand, whereas the right hand is ungloved and it's skin color. We see skin color hands down low. And I know that in some of these decks, so for example, I think we see so it's, okay, here's what I was noticing. Skin-colored hand, white hand. It's almost as if can I even say this? The blessing, the transmission that is coming through the rod brings the supplicant on our left, on our right, alive. Something like that. I just... and I know that's not the case. Some of the cards, they're all white hands. And in the Noble, so let's go back. In the Noble, we definitely have white hands for the Pope. All the supplicants have white hands. Oh, and I loved what David said about maybe this is just applause after a great speech or something like that. I thought that was funny. Yeah, sometimes we need to dial this back and bring more mundane energy to the readings. So rather than hands in prayer, this is applause. Seems not plausible to me, but yeah. All right. The Tarot of the Master has his staff in his actual right hand. Ah, okay. What do you make? What do you make of that? I want the Pope to have his rod in his left hand. It has a quality of receptivity. Le Pape has gloves on in many of the decks. And I'm sure you've read various interpretations of what that means. Gloved hands. I know one of you made a joke about Michael Jackson in one of the previous videos, and that reminded you of Michael Jackson. This is the Dodal, and in the Dodal, it looks like both hands are gloved. And his left holds the keys to the kingdom. He also has no acolytes at his feet. Which deck? Aria. This one. What deck are you talking about? The Tarot of the Master? Ah, okay. Yeah. All right. So yeah, I think this is not an easy card to discuss. This almost looks like flames here on this particular rod. Quite different. And we have a different cross in the Fine Dalatore, and a different gaze, which of course could be a reversal of the printing, but it's the stigmata in this card that is so interesting. I'll get out the High Priestess from this deck, because I know there's some other switches of energy with the High Priestess and the High Priest. I'll pull that out. Yeah. The crown seems to be familiar for the most part. 3-tiered crown with a 3-tiered staff, top of the staff. But as I look at these decks, I'm looking at, so the Noble is not, and this certainly is not. Looks more like flames. And this crown is quite different. All right, so let's go back. I want to go back to here, Perry. Ungloved makes him closer to his people's lives and intimacy. And I feel sometimes that the if the hand is ungloved, and if this figure is a transmitter of spirit, there is an intensity that might come with the ungloved hand that the recipient may not be ready for. Maybe the gloved hand also, in a way, protects the Pope holding that powerful tool. And of course, I'm thinking of this very esoterically as an actual transmitter of God, of spirit, of messages, that this rod would get quite hot and that it would need to be gloved. The hand would need to be gloved. But also there's a layer of protection at different levels of metaphor. For the Pope, the left hand is protected. He needs to keep something inside, like the High Priestess, right? The High Priestess is to keep something within. Okay, I'll need to look at that deck. I don't have Tarot of the Master. I will have to get a copy of that or look at it online. There is something to that, isn't there? I mean, it's beautiful, beautiful gazes. Thank you, Perry. Yeah. And as I sit with this card and I think about the role of this figure and all that this figure must uphold. And not in every tradition is this figure heavily garmented. Oh my goodness. Think about shamans who might wear the coat of a bear, but you would often see skin, like their human skin underneath it. But the heavy layers of garments, I wonder what that represents. I mean, there's a richness and an opulence and an honoring and all of that. But then in some traditions, there's a real simplicity to what the spiritual figure would wear. The older TDM decks have a shepherd's crook. His flock is guided by his communication from God, right? Yeah. Gloves are religiously important as priests handle sacred things and concepts which are powerful and sometimes quite dangerous in their power. You know, this kind of comment, so let's take in something quite contemporary. Okay, so this is totally bizarre, but I'm thinking Indiana Jones, the Indiana Jones movie, Indiana Jones and the Ark of the Covenant. And when they opened the Ark of the Covenant, they were told not to look. And if they looked upon the energy that came out of the Ark of the Covenant, they lost sight, and actually they died, I think. I think about that part on the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna reveals himself to Arjuna, and Arjuna looks upon God and is completely overwhelmed. And I think there's, many layers to this, that if we are ready, and, when are we ever ready to see God? Because you can't unsee what you see. And so the gloved hands as a layer of protection. I'm just going to reread what Arya wrote. Can be powerful. And so there's an implication here that the priest might abuse the power of the sacred objects. But there's also a need to not be in direct contact with them out of reverence and respect for sacred objects. I mean, there's certain things we don't touch. And you can still feel their energy. So I wonder, in interpretation of this card, if that might come into play, this idea of boundaries and protection. What are we ready or not ready to receive? And I think this card also comes up too when people might need a guide, a spiritual guide. They may not be able to find the answers on their own. I think the Hermit might indicate you could journey within independently to seek the light within. But there's something about this card and more people in the card that feels highly significant. Right? Kind of like you need to insulate electrical wires in order to benefit by it. What about in traditions where the feet of the spiritual people are bowed to? Maybe that's going off on a little bit of a tangent. So let's compare and contrast some of these cards. Okay. So in the Noble, we have a adorned shepherd's crook. This probably was a shepherd's crook. I doubt this is flames. And the Dodal has a really interesting, it almost looks like there's a flag of some sort coming off the top of this card here. And then, of course, in this funny deck, we have a scythe rather than a, well, it looks like a scythe rather than a, or it could be, it's a moon. I guess it's a moon because it's the Trionfi della Luna. I wonder if the two figures in Trionfi are fighting over who is to receive the energy. They are both sobbing. And again, the staff is touching this time the belly of the one on the right. I have another question for you, and that is about the hat. Why does the one on the left have a hat and the one on the right doesn't have a hat? Is that significant? And I haven't read anything into that. So I just wonder. I just wonder. So that's something I want to know about. And then, so we see faces. So in the VAV, we see faces. And in the Noble, I believe we see a profile of one face. Okay, let's zoom in here. Right? We see a profile here. So the person on our right, we see the profile of one of the face, and they're definitely, we can see the direction that they are looking. You know, one of the associations of this card was marriage. And it's so interesting that this card comes before the Lover's card. So I wonder what is going on in the VAV, in the front of that one. Aria, you have the new choice. What do you think is being held? Is he touching the leg of the Le Pape, the supplicant on the right? Let me know. Okay, let's go back out again. So honestly, I have more questions than answers, but I get a feeling about this card. And well, Dee, I'll go back to your comment one sec. Worshipping is a huge thing that is commonly seen as fearsome and beyond our capacity to even comprehend or endure the immense amount of energy and power. Well, Perry, you are a very special soul that for your whole life has been aware of the channeling of energy. And not everyone has the capacity for that. It's blocked, it's feared. It's something that, I don't know, people just don't come into this lifetime prepared to deal with. And I think about all the people I've met in the different places I've worshipped and practiced. And one of the things that I've learned is that the preparation of the physical body for the reception of that power, so much like Aria, you were talking about the electrical wires being grounded, protected, wrapped in something, right? We need to train our bodies in that way. So through breath, through various practices, to be strong enough to handle that energy. And sometimes there is a disregard for that. People play with this energy and get hurt, end up in, mental asylums in the old days, right? People get seriously damaged by messing with this kind of energy. So yeah, there is for sure a certain amount of respect needs to be there. This is not something to be messed with. All right, D. Le Pape guides, but also permits and forbids. Le Pape guides, but also permits and forbids. Yes. He is the bridge of communication between heaven and earth. So in that way, he sounds very Saturnian, in that Saturn is the great restrictor, right? Saturn is the one who creates the borders, both to keep out what we are not ready for and also to protect us, right? Makes the walls just high enough so we can't climb over them until perhaps we are ready, and then we will be released. New choice. Yes, the new choice supplicants are both touching the legs of Le Pape in keeping with the hypersexualization of that deck's theme. They are both. Let me look at it. Oh, yes, they are. They are both touching. Okay. Right. Le Pape is the spiritual counterpart of the emperor. Convents often would house mentally ill folks too. And I think that the those who already were channeling spirit safely and well may be able to heal. Oh goodness, now my crown chakra is going bing, 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 bing. Might be able to heal and train, because there's a discipline aspect here. Those who had gone too far or not understood all that they were receiving and channeling. I have always had a deep reverence for the earth and the power of our universe through our love. Beautiful. Spirit has rules to guide and protect. Yeah. So I think, we're all kind of on the same page here. And I want to ask you this. What might be an indication that to read this card as power over, as abuse of power? What cards might have to accompany this? Yeah, I'm just thinking, of course, I'm thinking, okay, maybe the devil, but what minor cards would have to be there? Maybe an excessive amount of coins. Until Pope Francis, I have not much respect or desire to witness the ways of the Pope as a beacon of love and devotion with kindness. And I wonder as well, too, if there is a face. There is a face that the Pope, and when I say Pope, so as far as this card, I'm not talking just about popes of the Catholic Church, spiritual leaders, that there are rules and there are guidelines that must be presented according to the particular organization. And yet, in a private meeting, behind closed doors, there is, I would hope, a soul that was deeply connected to spirit. And I don't know, I feel like sometimes this also is an archetype of struggling with how to navigate spirit and how to present, how to navigate spirit and how to, like sometimes you are the esoteric and spirit is not something that can be talked about. We need to keep it very simple, mundane, and 3D. just because of the nature of the audience. And we need to take these things step by step. So I imagine that, oh, so here's an example. I remember this is quite early on in my journey. And I walked by and I was listening to a conversation that probably I wasn't meant to hear. And my teacher, Shivani, was talking to somebody who had been practicing for a long time. And they were sitting outside, they were on a rock, and I was just walking by on my way back to my cabin or my tent. I don't know, remember at that time. And she was talking about how lonely her role was, that she didn't really have anyone to talk to because she was so busy teaching all the time, and that people were, her students for the most part, were mostly beginners. And it was nice that this particular person was there and they could go into at a much deeper level. And I remember that conversation. Okay, so your response was? Right, and we can't forget the question. It's so important. Saint Teresa of Avila would have fared poorly in our modern world, but she was cared for and helped to achieve great religious sensibility in her writings. Le Pape is the ideal of the spiritual channel. The human person with this great burden is not perfect. They also are on their own journey in spirit. That, and then my thought goes to I'm thinking of the Dalai Lama and the way the Dalai Lama is selected or identified as a child. I'm just thinking of this incredibly difficult experience, being here in this world and being here for the people, being here for myself. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's go back to the cards and just see if there's any other symbols or details that you want to talk about. There's one thing that I would like to mention. Look at the now, is it a chair or a throne? Or is it pillars? It looks an awful lot like a chair to me, not like pillars, because of the way that it is illustrated. Okay, and I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. I'm just going to get the Waitsmith. Because I was wondering about the history of the shift of this artwork. Okay, so in the Waitsmith, we see a chair for sure, a throne, and pillars. And we don't see that in Tarot de Marseille. And one of the things I observed was the crowding. Look at The high priestess, yes, she's smaller, but there is space, right? There's space between her and the pillars, whereas the Pope seems to be all crowded in. And I don't know what I want to read into that, but I think that the high priestess has space to explore her spirituality, whereas the Pope doesn't. He's on show, he's under pressure, he needs to be in front of the people. And I think it's really important to remember that this is the first card where there are other people. And so now we have a interaction among other beings, an interaction of beings, of human beings. And I know there are a few cards where that isn't the case, right? This being one of them. So, and you mentioned that Tarot of the Master doesn't have other people as well. But if you are working with a deck that has 3 humans in the deck, then this is certainly significant. All right. D says, I feel like he's standing preaching on a podium, much like David described in his book. So he's up on high. And then Arya says, my 3 favorite Hierophant cards are the Handle, Everyday People, and La Corte de Tarocchi. Ah, yes. So he's facing sideways in La Corte de Tarocchi. I'll just get that card out because it is handy. No, I read with it, so it's shuffled. I wonder. Well, I can leaf through it as we're talking. Good point. And then D says, the papesse has knees, and unless she's crouching, then she's sitting. Funny, as the high priestess is most frequently cloistered into secret spaces, caves, but the Pope is always out front giving the word of the Lord. Yeah, isn't that funny? I don't know. It was a random thought that came one day when I was looking at the Waitsmith, and I'm wondering if he's just overwhelmed with so much stuff. And you know how if you're reading with Waite Smith and then you're associating Taurus with the Hierophant, and Taurus as opulence and excess, there's that as well. Okay, I'm just going to find that card. And then if there's any other questions or anything else you want to say, please write it in the chat. La Corte de Tarocchi. La Temperanza. I really like the moon in this deck as well. No, that's Justice. Oh my goodness. Imperatrice. There it is, Il Papa. And here is another beautiful face. Arya, what do you think the symbols are on the robe of this Pope? Yeah. Okay. So from here, we go to another card that has 3 people. And if you're doing any preparation for next week, just think about this connection between the 3 people in the Hierophant and the 3 people in the Lover's card. And if you read in that open style where you transfer people to people, of course that makes sense. But is there another reason for this 3 to 3? You are all making such great sense, and it's so interesting to me in this sharing of information and thoughts. I think to us all, Perry. Okay. Come on. Le Pape's lower body is hidden and has an audience around his legs and feet. Jarringly, even though the Crowley deck is full of entities and symbols, there is no sense of acolytes in it. Yeah. Oh, that's a good guess. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, we could make all kinds of interesting. Yes, this Hierophant card. You know the Crowley Hierophant? Because the one thing I do like about this card though is the right, we have the High Priestess energy or the Isis energy within the Pope. Right. This, oh, sorry, you can't see it. It's a really cool card. All right, my friends. I'm going to leave you to think, to wonder, to write, to read. And I look forward to our sharing next Saturday. Yes, very Old Testament. Okay. Thank you. Really appreciate you all. Take good care. Namaste.